Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today is the day I've been wanting to film an eyeshadow palette video for so long. I kept saying I was going to do one every quarter and I never got to it. Well, I finally did it. I finally sat down and I filmed my eyeshadow palette collection. Also filmed multiple eyeshadow palette collection videos over the years. And so I feel like I did my best to keep it like short and sweet. I didn't talk about each palette a ton just because, but I do have an eyeshadow palette playlist. I have playlists on all of my favorite brands on my channel. Listen, you can find it. It's so easy. Just go to my homepage on YouTube and then you can search whatever palette, whatever brand, and it'll pull up all of the videos on my channel. So that's a quick, easy way for you guys to search through a channel if you're looking for something in particular. But you guys, I'm so excited. And if you guys are new to my channel, welcome. My name is KARENHARRIS. I've been on YouTube for like 10 plus years now. And my thing here on YouTube is tan girl friendly makeup. So when I first got on YouTube, I had the hardest time finding makeup reviews from somebody with my skin tone. So I decided to take matters into my own hands and start up a YouTube channel. And here we are, years and years later, still playing with makeup, still loving makeup. So if you love makeup just as much as I do, if you like to see 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 beauty videos every week, then don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out. And without further blabbering, let's get into my eyeshadow palette collection video. Okay, you guys, eyeshadow palette collection videos can be very intense, so I hope you guys have a snack or you're watching this while you're cleaning the house. I love watching long YouTube videos and have a feeling this one's going to be about an hour long. Now, just a few disclaimers. Some of these products were sent to me in PR. I'm not going to go through every single one that was sent in PR, wasn't sent in PR, because we'd be here for like 2 extra hours. So just know some of it was sent in PR. There's no way for me to link every single eyeshadow palette because I probably have like 200 to 300 eyeshadow palettes, so that's not going to be happening in this video. Also, YouTube is basically my job at this point. I don't work outside the home. YouTube is like my gig, and then I also stay home with my daughter. So don't feel any pressure. This is not like a normal amount of makeup to have by any means, and so don't feel like you're missing out or FOMO or anything. These videos are just for fun. It's just to see what we have in our collections. I'm nosy. I love watching eyeshadow palette collection videos, so definitely go into this without taking it too seriously. And yeah, I think that's everything. Oh, and I do mention Poshmark at some point in the video just because I do use Poshmark to kind of keep my collection in line, so that'll be linked down below. But I think that's everything, you guys, so let's go ahead and dive into my eyeshadow palette collection. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys my Natasha Denona collection. So this is my Natasha Denona Hidden Secret. This is the blue purple palette. I bought this on Black Friday like 2 years ago and I still haven't used this. I am so ashamed. I really want to do some kind of video with these, but I just haven't gotten around to it. And it's the exact same thing with this one. This is the green brown palette. These palettes are like $200+ each, I believe. I can't quite remember, but around Black Friday, she always does like 2 for the price of 1, which is when I grab them. But I'm really mad at myself that I haven't used them yet, but that is a goal for 2023. Next, I have the Star palette. This one, I believe, is discontinued. I don't consider this my favorite Natasha Denona palette, but I will never get rid of it because it is iconic. This is the Biba palette. It is one of her bigger palettes. I think these are like the $100 and something palettes. I actually scored this one on Sephora with a $100 like gift card thing they do. So yeah, that is the Biba palette. This one is the Circle Loco. This was holiday 2020, I think. And it's one of her bigger colorful palettes. Super fun. This is the Natasha Denona palette. You're gonna have to pry out of my cold, dead hands. My husband actually bought this. This is a Metropolis palette. And I think we got this like holiday 2019 or 2018. And I remember getting this and just, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. I hope that she does something inspired by this palette in the future because it's gorgeous. Another iconic palette in my Natasha Denona collection, this is the Gold palette. I remember not always loving Natasha Denona, not understanding the hype, and then this is the palette that really got me to start paying attention. It looks like it's not that much, but let me tell you, this is the palette that got me really into like the mustards. There's such a beautiful duochrome shade in here. If you guys have this palette, you definitely need to leave a comment down below because it is iconic. Okay, I have both of the Glam face palettes, but one is upstairs because I'm using it in my Shop My Stash. If you guys ever get a chance to pick these up, please do. I think they're fabulous. I have the light and the dark because I love the cream blush. I love the highlighter, and this is like a great palette for everyday use. And the dark version is a little bit more amped up. So I love these. They're so nice. I think these were holiday like 2021 or 2022. I can't remember, but I ended up grabbing both of them because I thought they were so good. Okay, another iconic holiday launch. This is the Trio Chrome palette. This was also from holiday, I can't remember, but this is the one that she did multi-chromes in, and it's so pretty, so fun. Yeah, I really like these bigger palettes from Natasha Denona. I'm going to show you my midi collection next, but I feel like I talked way more about how much I love each of the bigger palettes because I feel like I have just more memories attached to them. Okay, so this is my midi palette pile. I have the Retro Glam palette somewhere. I think I'm going to show that later because it's in my like November haul pile. So I'm just going to show you these ones. So this is the pastel palette. I believe this launched in 2022. This is the bronze palette, one of my favorites. This is the Glam palette. This is like one of her best sellers. I feel like it's always out of stock. It's not my favorite because if you've watched my channel, you know I'm not like a big cool tone gal, but I have to have every single one of these palettes. This is the Zendo. This is one of my favorite midi palettes as well. I really like the beautiful warm tones and then the beautiful blues over here. This is one of her latest launches as well. This is the My Dream palette. This is beautiful. I love the berries with the warm brown shades, so I would recommend this one if you are starting off with Natasha Denona and you're like, which palette should I get? I think this is a perfect way to sample her formulas, her different textures, and this just has a great everyday color story. I think a lot of people also love the retro for the berry tones. And honestly, seeing this palette opened up on screen right now is definitely making me want to use it again. This is the palette that started it all with the midis. This is the Sunrise palette. Honestly, I was really excited for this when it first launched, but I really don't gravitate towards it much anymore. And we have the beautiful Love palette. This launched on Valentine's or somewhere around Valentine's a long time ago. This is also one of the older midi palettes. I don't think you can buy this anymore. Honestly, not sure, but anyway, that is the Love palette. Okay, next we're gonna do one of my favorite indie brands. This is Adept Cosmetics House of L. I believe this is discontinued, but it launched this year, and they have the most gorgeous metallic eyeshadow formula. Their multi-duochrome shadows are out of this world. I feel like people are always wondering if this brand is worth the hype, and I'm here to tell you it is. This is their Codain palette. Look at these shades. I would swatch all of these for you guys, but honestly, we'll be here for 1,000 years. So I'm not gonna swatch, but just know if you're ever wondering that Adept makes amazing eyeshadows. This is the Eminent New palette. This one is beautiful as well. Trust me, my camera is not doing their multi-chrome formula any justice. I feel like swatches would be the best way, but this is the Ninhydrin. This is gorgeous. I believe they redid this one and it looks even more stunning now. This was their first palette that I bought. This is the Plain Jane palette. I still remember this launched around Black Friday a few years ago, and I hadn't really tried much of Adept. I had tried some of their single shadows and I was like, is this palette worth it? It is. It is. This is the remastered Plain Jane, so if you were to buy it now, this is the one you'd get. So the packaging is upgraded and things like that, but yeah, mine are a little dusty, don't mind me. And then one of the best palettes that launched this year, my friend Heather Austin and her gorgeous palette. If you want to try Adept, I would start with this one because it has a good mix of their multi-chromes, duochromes, and then some stunning mattes that pair really well with the shades that are included in here. And the other great thing is my friend Heather created so much inspiration with this palette, so you can find endless looks on her channel, on her Instagram, on her YouTube, on her TikTok. Yes, shameless plug to my friend for creating this gorgeous palette. Okay, now we're on to Huda Beauty and her large palettes. This is the Naughty palette. This one got so much, I don't want to say hype, I would say more like hate / criticism for this shade right here. Everybody kept saying it kind of looked like a disease, but it's just a glossy, kind of different little situation. But yeah, this is the Naughty palette. It's a stunning neutral palette. Next we have Rose Quartz. I feel like we need to take a moment for this gorgeous packaging, and this is what the Rose Quartz palette looks like. I think this one launched last year, and it looks like it will be too light for my skin tone, but I definitely filmed with this and it really works quite well for me. So in case you've been hesitant on this one, don't worry, it has enough deepening up shades to make very beautiful dramatic looks. This is an oldie but a goodie. This is the new Nude palette, and this is what it looks like. I feel like this is the one that everybody wants to buy. It's beautiful. This is Mercury retrograde. This is what it looks like. This is Desert Dusk. And last but not least, this is the Rose Gold Remastered. I had the original. I bought it when it first launched, but I did end up decluttering that one because this version is a lot better. And it looks like this. Okay, I'm pretty sure this is the only Tarte palette I own. I haven't put it away yet on my makeup shelf, so I'm just going to show it to you. This is the Maneater palette. It's actually really good. I was pleasantly surprised. The metallics are stunning. And so yeah, I'm actually not mad. I paid money for this. Okay, next we're going to do Pat McGrath. So let's start off with these smaller palettes. This is the Bridgerton palette. I think this is the first one. The second one is in my naughty bin, so I will show you those later. These three from Holiday a few years ago. These are so pretty. I think did she relaunch these, or maybe it was a different set of palettes, but this one is so beautiful. Sorry, it looks so messy. Here you go. I can't remember what these are called, but they're definitely part of my collection. I also have a lot of her quads. I'm going to do a separate video for my mini palette just because I know this video is already going to be so long. So I'm going to try and keep it as short as I can. This is her Star Wars palette. I have both of them. These are limited edition. I don't believe you can buy these anymore. And then this is the other one. I bought these because my husband's a huge Star Wars fan. But yeah, those are just like my 6-pan palettes from Pat McGrath. Okay, so now it's time for the big expensive Pat McGrath palettes. This is Subliminal. This is the first Pat McGrath palette. And it looks like this. This is Midnight Sun. This is Subversive. This is Mothership 3. This is Sublime. This is Mothership 2. So 1, 2, and 3 actually came out at the same time. And I don't think Pat McGrath was as well known on YouTube as she is now. So I remember spending money on these and thinking like, oh my gosh, if these are bad, I'm going to be so disappointed. But they exceeded my expectations. We've got Decadence. This is Mothership 4, I believe. And this one was limited edition. I think they like launch it from time to time, but this is an all shimmer palette. This is Mothership 10. And it's beautiful. It's actually much prettier than I thought when I saw the promo shots. This is my least favorite Mothership palette. This is Divine Rose, but some people love it because it's definitely one of her more everyday color stories. This is definitely an unexpected favorite. I just totally blanked on the name, but this is Mothership, I think this is 9. I can't remember. It's Divine Rose. I think this is Divine Rose 1. Okay, I've got Utopian Dream, another rosy themed palette, but also very stunning. And then I would argue that this is a neutral palette from Pat McGrath. This is Bronze Seduction, Mothership 5, one of my faves. And then I have the Holiday palette from 2021. This is the Celestial Mega Palette in Celestial Odyssey. And this is her first ever holiday palette. It looks like this. It's a little bit different as far as the layout goes, but I'm so glad I have this, and I do have 2022's holiday palette. It's just in another part of my collection, so you guys will see that separate. Okay, so I'm not a perfect human being. I definitely have palettes that I haven't used in my collection, so I'm going to show you a few of those. This is Kash Beauty Color Trip. I don't even know if they make this anymore, but I bought this on Beauty Bay, and of course it's one that I meant to review, but I never did, so I always make it a goal to try and get to palettes that I've never used before, but yeah, here's an example of that. Also, this palette from Makeup by Yolanda. I was always curious about this brand, so I grabbed one of these during a Black Friday sale or some kind of sale, and I've never used this palette. I think I'm just gonna put these two in a giveaway because I really don't hear people talking about IBY Beauty. I think somebody had suggested this brand in a video like years ago, and I picked these up, but I literally never got to them, so I think I just need to put these in a giveaway because I just don't see myself reaching for these. This gorgeous palette was sent to me from Artitude, and I believe they are a UK-based indie brand. This is their Phoenix palette. Again, I don't see myself actually using this palette, so I think I'm gonna add this to my giveaway pile so one of you can enjoy it. Okay, this is the last one in this pile. This is the Hindash Beautopsy palette. I really wanted to buy their newer palette, and I ended up not buying it because I saw my friends review it and they did not think it was that good. So I still have this one. I think I'm gonna need to make a bigger effort to try and use this. I'm so interested in putting that on my cheeks. So yeah, I have it. It's untouched. I'm gonna hold on to this one, but I'm definitely adding a few of these palettes to a giveaway pile because I don't need to keep all this makeup. I will never get to it, so need to be honest with myself. Okay, so YouTube is kind of a job for me now, and so I do get stuff in PR, and this is one that I'll probably put on my Poshmark because I got it in PR, I swatched it, and usually I'll put it on Poshmark just so you guys can cover the shipping. Sometimes I bundle things. I always have my Poshmark linked in my description box because it's a great way for me to get makeup into hands of makeup lovers. And unfortunately, I don't live by a lot of people that love colorful makeup, so I like to use Poshmark just to be able to cover the shipping and get it to y'all. But this is the Spectra palette from Gourmand Girls. So I did swatch this one time, I think for a video, but yeah, I think I'm gonna go ahead and declutter this. I'm also decluttering this one from ZZ Cosmetics. This is their British Museum collaboration palette. I think I did a video with this and it's beautiful, but I don't need this, so I'm gonna send it away. I have this Rose Garden palette from Color Drain. This one actually got to me broken a little bit, so you'll see the not broken one when I get to my Color Drain section in my collection, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and gift this to a friend because it has some beautiful neutral shades. Okay, so since we're on an unused palette kick, I figured I'd show you a few more because I had these sitting in a tote. This is from Martine Cosmetics. It's their 669 palette, I believe is what this one is called, and I grabbed this when they came to Beauty Bay. I really like the aesthetic of this palette, and of course I meant to do a review. I haven't done it yet, but I'm gonna make that one of my goals again for next year. But isn't this palette so gorgeous? This is another palette I bought to review because it has a hefty price tag. This is from Vanity Makeup, and it kind of reminds me of the Mothership palettes, except it's a very neutral palette. So yeah, I bought it to review. I haven't done it yet, but I'm gonna make it a goal for next year. Okay, I bought this one because it's one of my friends, I can't remember whose, like one of their favorite palettes from a few years ago, and it got discontinued or something, but then they bought it back in a smaller format. So I grabbed the Sandra Rose palette from Glaminatrix. I do get PR from them now, but I did buy this one myself, so it's definitely in my pile of unused palettes to play with. This palette I had such good intentions of, and I was gonna do a review. This is from Beauty Bay, and Beauty Bay shipping took so long that I haven't filmed with this. I do have B-roll for this, but honestly, I don't know when I'm gonna get to filming with this palette. So Yeah, this is the Bright 2.0 palette from Beauty Bay. This is another palette from Beauty Bay that just took forever to get to me, so I haven't done anything with the Earthy palette either. And then the Midnight palette, which I also bought in that same order with Earthy. 42 colors. So affordable. You guys know I love Beauty Bay, but yeah, I just feel like I wasted my money because I bought all three of these massive palettes and I haven't done a thing with any of them. Okay, so now we're on to another organized portion of my collection where I have all these palettes together. So this is my ABH collection. We have the Nouveau palette, which is one of their new ones from this year, and it looks like this. I've got an oldie but a goodie. This is the Carly Bible palette. Another shameful, I've never used this palette ever palette. This is the Alyssa Edwards collab palette. Riviera is one of my least favorite ABH palettes. I was just not a fan of this color story together. One of my favorite palettes, the Master palette from their collab with Makeup by Mario. This is the Norina palette before she had her own like offshoot brand with ABH. This is the Soft Glam by ABH, the OG neutral palette. This is the ABH Sultry palette. Look at this fun packaging. This is what the inside looks like, and people were like rioting for them to bring this one back, so they did. And this is what it looks like. We've got the most iconic palette from ABH. This is the Jackie Aina palette they did. This is probably one of the most hated palettes of all time. This is a Subculture palette. Let me tell you, if you're a makeup newbie, they like really screwed up their formula with this, and then they like secretly redid it, but they didn't tell anyone. So I ended up buying this at like TJ Maxx or Marshalls or something, and the formula is 10 times better with these new palettes, in my opinion. So if you ever see this, grab it. This one really needs to get thrown out, but I'm not gonna replace it if I get rid of it. So I'm just keeping it for the sake of keeping my collection as intact as I can. This is the Modern Renaissance palette. This is one of my favorites. This is the Amrezy palette. How stunning are these shades? I feel like this was their palette that they launched last year to like test the waters of their new format, but this is the Primrose palette, and it did have these face shades in it, which I don't think a lot of people liked, but I actually don't mind the blushes in here. The eyeshadow formula in this palette is top-notch, very good quality. Okay friends, we're gonna look at Sigma next. This is of course one of my favorite brands. Honestly, a lot of the brands that I have multiple palettes from are my favorite brands. I did recently work with Sigma. I have a favorite set with them, so if you haven't seen the news, I will link it down below so you guys can shop it. It's gorgeous. And one of the palettes in my favorite set is actually a mini version of this Quarter Rosa palette, but this is like the one that started it all for me. Look at this stunning color story. It is so beautiful. You can do neutral looks. You can do beautiful wine tone looks with this palette. So I really, really love it so much. This is a collaboration that they did. I will say I'm not a big fan of the pans in this palette, but that's just like a personal thing for me. Another collaboration palette, this is the Essentials palette. I really like this palette. All the face shades work for me. This is a great on-the-go neutral palette, and the formula is stunning. This is an iconic palette for Sigma Beauty. It's the new Mod palette, and it is a beautiful berry purpley palette. This one for me is like one of my favorite Sigma palettes. It's the Untamed palette. This palette, I think this video is the one that the Sigma founder saw, and this is how I got on the Sigma PR list. So this palette will always have a very special place in my heart. If you love neutral gold shades, you need to pick up the Sigma Ambiance palette. If you like warm neutrals, the Warm Neutral palette is for you. This was Sigma's first ever Disney collab, and I truly think this palette is iconic. This is the Cinderella palette. This is another stunning palette from Sigma Beauty. It's the Enchanted palette, and it definitely gives me like Enchanted Forest vibes. This is such a fun, colorful palette. This is their Alice in Wonderland palette. Okay, I have a few more palettes that have been sent to me that I haven't tried yet. This is another one from Gourmand Girls. It's the Ethereal palette. Looks like this is an all shimmer palette. I also have Radioactive from them. And then another indie brand, this is It's Belle, and it's their Cool Summer palette. I have swatched this, I just haven't put it on my eyes yet. Okay, so let me show you some of my Too Faced palettes. Actually, I think I only have these two. So we've got the Cinnamon Swirl, which typically I review these every like holiday season, but I decided to skip on this year's palette because it just looks so much like these two. And I didn't feel like anybody needed to see that. So this is the Pumpkin Spice palette. They're so cute, but like I really didn't need another one that looked exactly the same. I do have one more Naked palette, but I have the Urban Decay Cyber palette, which I think is on like huge sale because honestly, I personally think this palette sucks, but that's what it looks like. This one is actually nice. This is the Urban Decay Naked Wild West palette. I feel like the Naked series has really run its course, but I can't help myself. I have such an attachment to the original Naked palette that I sometimes will like buy these, but it's honestly true what people say. You never have to pay full price for an Urban Decay palette these days. Okay, this is the only Dominique Cosmetics palette I have. This is the Moment palette. And honestly, I don't see myself using this in the future, but I was curious because I used to collect her palettes and then she switched to this plastic format, so I wanted to try it, but it's honestly not that special. Okay, and this is my Charlotte Tilbury collection. These are beautiful. So this is a holiday palette from a few years ago. This palette is one of my favorites. I think this came out last year or the year prior. I'm still waiting to see what her holiday 2022 palette's gonna look like. I don't think you can buy this palette anymore, but the formula is so beautiful, so I plan on holding on to it. This is the Icon palette. Okay, so I found a few more palettes I've never used. This one I had very good intentions. I bought the Garden of Juvia's palette, and this is what it looks like. It's a beautiful pastel palette. I don't know if Juvia's Place has done pastels before, so I grabbed this because I wanted to see if it was tan girl friendly. I still want to do that video. I'm gonna make it happen. But this is what it looks like. I have the 10 pan palette that Glamlite launched with Michaela, and it's such a stunning green palette. Again, I didn't get a chance to use this one, but I definitely plan on it because you guys know me, I love green eyeshadow. I think it's time for me to admit that I'm never gonna get around to using this Rugrats palette. I definitely bought this because of nostalgic reasons, because I love the Rugrats, but I think I'm just gonna go ahead and put this in my giveaway pile because then one of you can enjoy it. This is another one from Martine Cosmetics that I have bought and I've never used. I want to use this one and the other palette I showed you guys earlier and create a video. I'm so embarrassed because I love their color stories. They even recently launched a new like alien theme palette that I really wanted. Luckily, it sold out on Beauty Bay by the time I decided I wanted it, so I don't have a third Martine Cosmetics palette that I've never tried, but I have the two, and I've admitted it now on the internet, so I'm gonna try and use that to hold myself accountable, but I love this palette. It's like diner themed, and it's just so cute. Okay, I wanna show you guys the newest palettes in my collection from Melt. These are the Bad Zodiac palettes. I only bought two of them, so I have this one, which is Air, and then I also bought Earth, which looks like that. I also had these palettes set aside because I was gonna rank all my pastel palettes, but I have a few, like the Juvia's Place one, that I still need to play with, so that video is probably gonna come up in 2023, but this is the BH Lost in Los Angeles. This is the Profusion pastel palette. This is the BH Cosmetics 90s palette from their like Decades collection. And this is the Angel palette from Unicorn Cosmetics. So at the time I'm filming this, I still need to film my October eyeshadow palette ranking video. So I have some of those palettes set aside. So these are the Odens Eye holiday palettes. They are absolutely stunning. I believe these are sold out now, so you can't get them anymore, which is so unfortunate for the people that missed out. But for the people that did pick these up, oh my gosh, you are part of a very exclusive club now. This is the All Done Up palette by Blend Bunny. I got this palette in PR from Wicked Widow Beauty. This is the Nomad Cosmetics Santa's Village Holiday Palette. This is 1964 by Unearthly Cosmetics. This is So Strange by Unearthly Cosmetics. This is the Weirdos palette by Unearthly Cosmetics. These are the 3 palettes from the Unearthly mystery box for Halloween. This is a collaboration palette from Unearthly Cosmetics. It's a beautiful, colorful rainbow palette. I haven't tried this one out yet, so it needs to go in my palettes to try basket. This is the Beauty Bay Dark Fantasy palette. This is the Simply Posh Cosmetics Genuine Gems palette. I just picked this up and I really want to try this brand, so I am gonna put this in my palettes to try pile. This is the Adept Cosmetics Makeup palette. I have eye swatches of this palette on my channel. Highly recommend checking this out if you were interested in this palette. Game Beauty sent over their new Cyberpunk palette. This is so cute. This is the newest Urban Decay Naked palette. It's a collaboration palette with Robin Eisenberg, and I really thought this color story was interesting, and I was able to get it on a discount, so I did end up grabbing it. I haven't used it yet, so we're adding it to the try pile. This is the holiday palette from Huda Beauty this year. This is the Empowered palette. I actually filmed a video with this, but I lost the footage. So currently I have no video with this palette on my channel. It's really good though, and I can't wait to try it again. I'm gonna have to refilm that video, so yeah. It is what it is. This is the Warms My Blood palette from Unearthly. This is the Lunar Beauty 12 Days of Lunar Advent Calendar palette. This is the latest palette from Sigma Beauty. This is their collaboration palette with Diana Saldana. And when I showed you guys my Pat McGrath collection, I told you I have the new holiday palette. This is Celestial Nirvana by Pat McGrath. Okay, this is the Terra Moon Cosmic Wanderer palette. This is one of the newest palettes in my collection. This is the Hypernova palette by Sugardrizzle. This is going to be launching on Black Friday. This is the newest palette from Natasha Denona. This is the Retro Glam palette I was telling you guys about when I was showing you the midi palettes. I ended up picking this one up because it was part of the Sephora sale, so it was 20% off, so I figured it was worth grabbing. And I don't love the color story. I haven't played with this yet, but I will keep you guys posted. You'll probably see a video on this at some point. Okay, so if you're not familiar with my makeup room, I store my eyeshadow palettes on Billy bookshelves. So the first portion of this video was bookshelf number 1. Now we're on to bookshelf number 2, which has a ton more eyeshadow palettes on it. A lot of the brands on bookshelf number 2 are indie brands, and we're gonna start off with one of my favorites, Glamlite. So I had to start off by showing you the newest palettes I have from Glamlite. This is their Scooby-Doo palettes. And these are undoubtedly some of the best eyeshadow palettes that Glamlite has done. I think the color stories of these are what I've just been waiting for Glamlite to do. So I placed a Glamlite order and I actually ended up picking up their Barbie palette. This one launched, I think, not very long ago, but I decided to skip it. But then when I was ordering the Scooby-Doo palettes, I figured I'd go ahead and grab this just so I have completeness in my Glamlite collection. So these are all the palettes from the Glamlite, I think this was the Happy Hour collection. So this is a wine. We have Dirty Martini that looks like this. We've got Margarita, and we have Chocolate Martini. This is the Glamlite Ice Cream palette. These are the Glamlite and Icy palettes. This is Glamlite and Frosted Flakes. How cute is the packaging on this one? And I have both of the Big Michaela palettes. This is their Red Velvet Cupcake palette. And I keep some of my Glamlite palettes in the packaging because it's easy for storage. So this is their Cake palette. This is one of the donut palettes. This is the Chocolate Donut palette. Look at their packaging. It's so wild. I mean, I really do appreciate their new square rectangular packaging, but this is like iconic Glamlite. This is their Pie palette, just in time for Thanksgiving. I mean, the detail is just... This is their Mini Burger palette. I've never used this. I just bought it because I wanted to have all the Glamlite palettes. This is their Street Taco palette. I think this is my first ever Glamlite palette. It's the Burger palette. I've never used these either. These are the pizza palettes. We've got Veggie and Meat Lovers. This is the Glamlite Street Taco palette. And the last palette in my Glamlite collection, this is the Paint palette. This is the Sephora and Moschino palette. This is the first one they did. This one was one that launched when makeup would actually like sell out at launch, and I still remember the nightmare situation that ensued when this collection launched. But all I wanted was this palette, and you bet your bottom dollar I grabbed it. So I don't think I've ever used these palettes. I know for sure I haven't used this one. This one I'm not 100% sure about, but these are from a brand I no longer support. I'll link the video down below that I saw about how scammy the owners of this brand is, and you guys will have to let me know your opinion, but I plan on getting rid of these at some point. I don't really know what to do with them, but yeah, this is the end of the year, so this is where all the naughty brands and the naughty palettes are getting kicked out of my collection. I think I'm gonna declutter these palettes too. So we have the Cherry Coke palette, the Jaclyn Hill Divine Neutrals, and the Ashley Strong palette. I know I've never used this one. I've filmed videos with both of these. I just don't need them. I don't see myself going back and reaching for these, but they are a part of my collection right now at the time I'm filming these. But yeah, I just don't see myself using them. Yeah, this one I haven't even swatched, so maybe I'll put it on Poshmark if somebody wants to buy it, but these three are leaving my collection. This one I feel like I'm keeping for memory purposes. This is the Jaclyn Hill palette that just like broke the internet back in the day. I don't see myself using this one. This is the Jaclyn Hill palette round 2 or whatever. I don't like this one as much as the first one. I'm not going to really use either of these, but I'm going to hold on to them for one more year. I'm keeping this one. This is the Tati Beauty palette. I ended up buying this because I feel like some people love this palette and some people hate this palette. I think it's a nice palette, and Tati Beauty no longer exists, so I'm going to keep this because it's a little bit of makeup history. Okay, I think I'm going to declutter both of these palettes. Honestly, they're just taking up room in my collection, and I don't foresee myself like looking back someday and being like, oh my gosh, I really miss my P. Louise Worldy palette or this like chessboard palette. I don't know what it was about these palettes that made me buy them. Well, this one I know I thought the color story was really cool, but they're so big and bulky. I always joke that I could probably kill somebody with these, but I just don't see myself going back to this. I don't plan on purchasing from this brand in the future. So I think I'm okay with saying goodbye to both of these palettes. Okay, this one is so special to me. This is my friend's collab, Amy Loves Makeup, and it's the Alma palette. I'm never getting rid of this. It's so stunning. I don't know if Paulina is really posting on YouTube or if she'll come back, but this is her collab with Blush Tribe. I don't believe this brand exists anymore. But I remember when this came out, it was like iconic because it was such a colorful collab and it was an indie brand with an indie creator. It was very, very cool. I cluttered all of my KKW beauty palettes, but I decided to keep this one because I really like this color story. I have this Poison Ivy palette, which was Blend Bunny's, I think, very first collaboration eyeshadow palette. She has a ton of them now, but I think this was the first one and it's very nice. Okay, so here's a brand that I'm still trying to make up my mind about. This is Clarity Cosmetics. So I have their Cobra palette, I have their Bloom palette, and this is their Magic Lamp palette. It came a little bit broken, so I don't love that for me. But yeah, let me know your opinion on this brand because I'm curious to hear what you guys think. Okay, now we're gonna look at one of my favorite indie brands. This is the Kaleidos Flower Punk palette. Okay, I have two Kaleidos Escape Pods because they repackaged it. So this is the new packaging, which I prefer. So I'm gonna actually go ahead and declutter the old packaging. This one you're gonna have to pry out of my cold dead hands. This is Club Nebula, my friend Angie's collaboration with Kaleidos. This I believe is Kaleidos' first ever palette. This is Deep Sea Luster, and yeah, I'm so glad I got this because the amount of people that still wish they could get their hands on this palette, I think that they could re-release this and people would go nuts, but it's stunning. Now you're gonna see my small Made by Mitchell collection. So this is the Do You Want Some Milk palette. This one is Head in the Clouds, and this one is Feet on the Ground. Okay, next we have Sydney Grace. They were one of the first brands to put me on their PR list, and they're always so generous. They usually have 2 different versions of their palettes, one geared for light medium and one geared for medium to dark. So they usually send me both. So this is their Be Mine palettes. This is their iconic Tiny Marvels palette. This is a collaboration that they did with the late Mel Thompson. I believe this is their first palette. This is Autumn Rain. This is their latest collaboration, and this was their collaboration with Tina from The Fancy Face. They did send me all of their palettes from their collaboration with Temptalia, so there's a light and a deep version, and I genuinely felt like the luckiest girl on earth when I got all of these, because that's a lot of eyeshadow palettes for an indie brand to send my way. I also have their Mountain Trail and California Coast palettes. I have their Summer Days palettes in the light and the dark. This is their Chasing Dreams palette. I bought both of these palettes myself. We have Coffee Talk and Sweet Dreams. And then this is their Enduring Love palette from 2020. They have since repackaged this palette. Okay, so I showed you guys the It's Belle Summer palette earlier, but these are the rest of their palettes. So I have the Flare palette. This was the first one. No, this was not. This is the second one. This is their first ever palette. It's called Break the Rules, and it did so well for them. And this is their Dawn of Fall palette. This is one of the most stunning palettes I received in 2022. This is the Dragon Fruit palette from Cleona, and this is their collaboration with Emily Violet Marie. Now I'm going to show you my Artist Couture palettes. I honestly don't foresee buying more palettes from them, just because I've heard like the quality is very hit or miss, but I did buy the Supreme Nude series. So this is the Quickie Supreme Nudes palette. I don't think I even ended up using this because I was in such a hurry when I bought it. This is the OG palette that made me fall in love with this brand. It's the Supreme Nudes palette. This is the Supreme Mauves palette. And this is the Supreme Browns palette. Okay, here's another one of my favorite indie brands. This is the Lake Como palette from Nomad. This is one of my favorite palettes they did this year. This is the Hudson Valley palette. Another favorite from 2022, this is the Nomad Lodge palette. This is their Fire and Ice palette. This one's inspired by Iceland. This one is definitely not one of my favorites. It's not the worst, but yeah, it's just not really my color story. I love the America's Parks palette. You guys know how much I love green eyeshadow, so it's one of my faves. I still haven't put this palette on my eyes. I'm ashamed. This is their Tokyo palette. This is the Nomad Cloud Forest palette. This is their Paradise palette. This one was a little bit controversial, so I'll let you guys do your own research on it, but this is their Shanghai palette. This is Nomad Haunted Europe. I don't think you can get this one anymore, but this was one of my favorite color stories they did previously. This is the Orient Express palette. So now we're switching to Lunar Beauty. This is their Greek Goddess palette. This one is Strawberry Dreams. This is Nude Prism. This is Moonspell Volume 2. This is Moonspell Volume 1. And this is Eternal Eclipse. Okay, so I have the Denisa Myricks Lightworks palette. This is Lightwork 4 that launched this year. And this is Lightworks 3. Such gorgeous palettes that are full of multi-chromes. This is the brand Fantasy Cosmetica. They are a gaming inspired brand. So we have the Bard palette, which is their latest. We have the Sorcerer palette. And then their first palette was this one called the Druid palette. I was introduced to this brand by my friend Heather Austin, so I bought their Sorcerer palette. This is their Ethereality palette, and this is their Vampirism palette. This is my little Glaminatrix collection. So I have the Silent Night palette, which I bought, I believe, with my own money. I think they sent me U Beauty. This is what it looks like. Such a beautiful palette. This is their Nearly Neutrals palette. It's so gorgeous. And this one is their stunning Nocturnal palette. They're also sending me their newest palette. Kind of blanking on the name right now, but that is on its way to me. So as soon as I get it, I will film a video with it. Next, I have my little Shroud Cosmetics collection. So I have the Strobe palette. I have their Arcana palette. This is their Creepy Cute palette. This is their first collaboration palette with Betty Jean. This is It's Freaking Bats. and their latest collaboration palette, Halloween. Okay, now it's time to show you my Lethal collection. So this is Lethal is Dead. These are some of their multi-chromes that you can get as singles. I just have them in a 9-pan palette. This is their Berlin palette. Then we have this one. I don't remember the names of these collections because they're not on the palettes, but this is another collection they did. And then this one is like their 90s palette. I think they did this one this year. This is the One Up palette. And of course, Teresa is Lethal, which is their newest collaboration palette with Teresa is Dead. Okay, so these two palettes are from the Polish brand Glam Shop, and they're super beautiful, super pigmented. I haven't purchased from them in a while, and I don't really have any intentions of purchasing from them anytime soon. So yeah, I just want to show you the two palettes I have. They kind of take forever to get here, and it's a little bit of work, and I'm just not willing to do it right now, but these are the two palettes I have from them. These two palettes are from What's Up Beauty. They're a fun like nail polish brand turned makeup brand. So this is their Geodes palette, and this is their Monsoon palette. Okay, the next set of palettes is another favorite indie brand. These are from Menagerie. So this is the Sugar High palette. I have to show you all the covers of these palettes because they're so beautiful. This is the Serenity palette. This was their collab with Annette's Makeup Corner, and it looks like this. It's so vibrant. Did we expect anything less from Annette? This is their Flight Club palette. Looks like that. This is their Whale Song palette. This is their Pastel Pup palette. This is their Indigo Ink palette. And this is their Killer Purr palette. Okay, I keep telling you guys, like, this is my favorite, but Odens Eye is definitely one of my favorite indie brands. So these are some of their limited edition palettes. So these are 3 collaboration palettes you can't get anymore, but this is their Hummingbird palette. This is their Red Dragon palette. And this is their Giant Wolves palette. I loved this name so much that I named my daughter Freya. And these are the Saga of Freya palettes. So this is one of them. This is the next one. And this one is double-sided. So that's one side. And this is the other side. These are some of their bigger palettes. So this is the Solmon 2 palette. It's so stunning. This palette is also another favorite of mine. You're gonna have to pry this out of my cold dead hand. This is your PSA. If you've been wanting the Hella palette, which is their collaboration with Angelica, you better get to Odens Eye and order it, because once it's gone and you can't get it anymore, I don't want to hear from you guys about how you wish you had bought this palette. This one is the Alva 2 palette. This one is my first ever Odens Eye palette. I bought this with my own money. This is the first Alva palette. This one definitely deserves more hype. This is the Noors palette, or the Noors. I don't know how to say it, but it's so cute. My next large collection of palettes is Colourpop. So this is their Witching Hour palette, which was their Hocus Pocus collaboration. This is the palette from their Palm Springs collection. This is their first ever Hocus Pocus collaboration palette. I have to show you guys this packaging because it's so cute. This is their latest Hocus Pocus collaboration palette. This is the Lush Life palette. You would have to pry this out of my cold dead hands because hands down, one of my favorite Colourpop palettes. This is the Good Sport palette, definitely contender in second place as one of the best Colourpop palettes. This is embarrassing, but I don't actually remember if I've used the Sonic Bloom palette. This is my favorite neutral palette from Colourpop. It's the I Think I Love You palette. This is Colourpop's collaboration with Raw Beauty Christie. This is the At Forest Sight palette. This is another beautiful neutral warm tone palette. This is their Whatever palette. I had to get this palette because it was their Lizzie McGuire collaboration palette. This is their Nightmare Before Christmas palette. I love citrusy things, so I had to get the Limoncello palette. This is their Rudolph palette. This is their collaboration with Powerpuff Girls. This is their Star Wars collaboration palette, or at least one of their Star Wars collaborations. Okay, I've definitely owned more of their mega palettes in the past, but now I just have 2 of them. I have the Matte About Hue palette, which I kind of bought as a impulse purchase. I really don't need this big of a rainbow palette, but here it is. This one I actually really like the color story. This is It's a Mood by Colourpop. And I have a bunch of their little 9-pans. So this is the Wild Child. This is the Smoke Show. I think it's called something else, but This is the version I have. This is the Brown Sugar palette. This is another one of their Star Wars collaboration palettes. This is It's My Pleasure. This one is Limelight. This one is called Of Quartz. This is another Star Wars palette. I haven't even used this one. It's all amethyst. This is the Orchid You Not. This is their collaboration with the Boston Celtics. This is one of my favorites. It's the High Tides. And this is their collaboration with Tinkerbell. Okay, next we're gonna look at my BH Cosmetics palettes. One of my used to be favorite brands. It's still to be decided if they're gonna make it in 2022, 2023, but these are their Absinthe and Venom palettes. They came out for Halloween, I think, a few years ago. This is another BH collection that had some really stunning palettes. Okay, so now we're looking at their weekend and travel palettes. So this is Blueberry Waffles. This is Smitten in Switzerland. One of my all-time favorites, this is the Paris palette. This is a face palette, but it's in my eyeshadow palette collection. This is Tulum. This is Trending in Tokyo, and this is the Avocado Toast palette. This is another face palette. This is Glowing in Greece. Okay, next are these Ice Cream Sundae palettes. Without a doubt, some of the best palettes BH Cosmetics ever has done. This is Cotton Candy, Bubblegum, Cherry on Top, Pistachio, Orange Sorbet, and this one is Sugar Cone. Next I have this BFF palette. This is their Remix palette. This is one of their best holiday palettes ever. This is the Naughty palette. And this is the List palette, an unexpected favorite from 2021 holiday, I believe. Okay, so I want to show you guys my Nabla palettes. This is the Secret palette. This is their Side by Side palette. This is their Dreamy 2 palette. From Adept Cosmetics, I have the Baby Girl palette. This is the Sugar Daddy palette. This is the Hidden Garden palette. This is their Mystic Forest palette. This is their Resort palette. And from Lowest Cosmetics, I have Meet Me in the Underworld and Meet Me at Midnight. Okay, next we're gonna look at my Give Me Glow collection. This is the Sweet and Sticky palette. This is their Juicy Olive palette. This is their Extra Spicy palette. This is their Christmas Morning palette. These are two palettes they launched this year. They're available as singles, or you can get them like this in a bundle. Yeah, I think they're both just called the Nightlife palettes. This is the Vivid Rose palette. This is the Vintage Rose palette. This is their Pastel Dreams palette. This is their Summer Vibes palette. This is their Bad Witch Club palette. And this is their Two Moods palette. Okay, now I'm going to show you my BPerfect collection. This is their Rain palette. This is their Clientele palette. This is their Dream Big palette. And the reason I can't buy any more Carnival palettes is because I have most of them. So this is the Carnival 3. This is the Carnival XL Pro. And this is the Carnival Antidote palette. These are my two Scott Barnes palettes. I have the neutral one and the colorful one. And I used to have a majority of the Juvia's Place palettes, but this is what I have left. So this is the Warrior palette. This is one you would have to pry out of my cold dead hands. This is the Tribe palette. I really like this color story. It's the Nomad palette. This is the Wahala palette. This one is an epic Juvia's Place palette. This is the Wahala 2. And I really don't know what possessed me to buy this one, but this is the Culture palette from Juvia's Place. I haven't used this. I don't think I ever will, but I'm gonna put it back on my bookshelf. Okay, the next brand, I also have a lot of palettes. This is my Melt collection. So this is the Mary Jane palette. This is the New Gemini palette. This is the Morte palette. This is the Vita palette. This is the 420 palette. This is the Rustic palette. This is the Gemini 2 palette. This is their Holiday 2021 collection palette. This is the, I forgot the name of the palette, Amor Mariposa palette. This is the Waiting Room palette. This is the Beetlejuice palette. This is the She's in Parties palette. This is the Blueprint palette. This is the Smoke Show palette. And this is the Impulsive palette. I will say Melt is definitely the most inconsistent brand, or one of the most inconsistent brands in my collection, but I love them, so I can't help but collect their palettes. This is the ABH Rose Metals palette. This is their latest palette. And I just found this on my shelf because I hadn't put it away yet. I wish it had a few lighter shades just to help with the balance of the palette, but the quality is top notch. Here are the other two Game Beauty palettes I have. This is the only palette I have from Cosmic Brushes, but oh my gosh, it's one of the most amazing palettes I've ever tried. And I think this might be ranking very high in my yearly rankings video for 2022. I bought this palette from the brand Pink Crush Cosmetics just because I was curious to try the brand. Honestly, now that I've tried it, it's not anything to write home about in my opinion. There are so many indie brands out there that are using private labeled formulas and making palettes and coming out with brands. And it's honestly getting a little bit exhausting. I don't know if this is private label. I am suspicious that it is. But either which way, I can't keep up with all the indie brands anymore is all I'm trying to say. Okay, so here's a new favorite small indie brand. This is Sugardrizzle Cosmetics. This is their Meant to Be palette. It has some really pretty duochrome, multi-chrome shades in it. This is the Mattes palette from Sugardrizzle. I don't remember the name of this palette from Sugardrizzle, but I have it. This is their Halloween 2022 palette. This is the Trick Roar Treat. This is the Sugar Dreams palette. This is their Dragonfly palette. This is the Frosty Flamingo palette. This is their Gnome Chrome palette. This is their Man I Love Frogs palette. And I have the Terra Moon El Barrio palette. This was the first eyeshadow palette that Terra Moons did, and they did send me this one. And I have this OPV palette that I received in PR. This is the Bloom palette. This is another small indie brand that I wanted to try. This is the Black Moxie and Pixie Glow collaboration palette. Okay, this next brand is also another favorite brand. This is Unearthly Cosmetics. Some of the palettes say Alien on them because that used to be their name, but now they're called Unearthly. This is their Alien Graveyard palette. This is Don't Be Jelly. This is my original Lore palette. This has been repackaged and I think it has a new formula too. I already own it in the new one, so I'm going to go ahead and declutter this. This is the Poison Apple palette, another one that has been repackaged. This is the Fairy Frolic palette. This is the Milkshake palette. This is the Sleepover palette. This is the Witching Hour palette. I think this one is called the Bunnies palette. This is one of my favorite Unearthly palettes. This is the Fall Magic palette. This is the Hauntingly Glamorous palette. This is the Not Normal palette. This is the Dead of Night palette. This is the Leather and Lace palette. This is the All I Ever Wanted palette. This is the All I Ever Wanted Volume 2 palette. This is the Vitality palette. This is their Grind palette. This is the Dead of Night palette. And here is my fresh copy of the Lore palette. Okay, Blend Bunny Cosmetics is another one of my favorite indie brands. This is their Dollhouse palette. This is their Primal palette. This is their Blends palette, the only rainbow palette you'll ever need. And this is their Surge palette. This is from the brand Copacetic Cosmetics. This is the Elysian palette. And yeah, I don't really have any thoughts on this one. I think I'm gonna go ahead and declutter this. These are my two Lime Crime palettes. I really like this one. It's called the Prelude palette, so I'm gonna keep that and I'm gonna declutter the Venus 3. These palettes are from a brand called Alter Ego and they make dupe palettes. This is their Aurora palette. This is their Sahara palette. This is their Daydream palette. This is their Goddess palette. This is the Canyon palette. And this is their Artemis palette. This is a palette I've never used. This is the Profusion and Mean Girls collaboration palette. I purely bought this because of nostalgic reasons. I love the movie Mean Girls. It's definitely like, I don't know, what I did every day after school when I got home from like 10th grade. I would watch Mean Girls over and over again. So yeah, I basically just bought this because of the nostalgia. I have never tried this palette. Next, I have these two OG Viseart palettes. They're probably some of the older palettes in my collection at this point. I love this Lion King palette that they did in collaboration with Sir John when the movie came out, Beyonce's makeup artist. I had good intentions when I bought this NYX palette, but I've literally never used it. This is e.l.f.'s collaboration with Jay Kissa. This is the e.l.f. Earth and Ocean palette. This is a awesome neutral palette. I don't think you can get this anymore, but this is when e.l.f. collabed with Jen Atkins. This is super random, but I've never used this palette. This is from Aether Beauty. I bought this because I really like the color story, but I've literally never used this palette. Okay, so this is the Gourmand Girls and Doodles by the Bunny collaboration palette. This is called the Spook palette. It's so good. This is the Cash Beauty, what is this called? The Crystal Nights palette. I've never used it, so I think I'm gonna go ahead and put this in a giveaway pile. I like to know good drugstore makeup, and these two palettes by LA Girl are pretty nice. I really like the Main Stage palette, and then we have Festy Bestie. These are also two really nice Profusion palettes from the drugstore. It's the Harvest palette and the Ethereal palette. I have the Spotlight palette from OPV Beauty, and this is the Tropical Dreams palette from OPV Beauty. Okay, so the next few palettes are in my declutter bin for 2022 already because I don't like them. So this is the BH Cosmetics Mystic Zodiac Moon palette. This is the Colourpop Let's Roll palette. Bella Beaute Bar Euphoric Dreams palette. Pat McGrath and Bridgerton. I think I'll actually keep this one, but it's definitely getting mentioned as one of the worst makeup products of 2022. And then I love Ace Beauty, but this palette just did not cut it for me. This is the Violet Sage palette. Okay, this is one of the more expensive palettes in my collection. This is from Izamaya Beauty. This is from the brand Likely Makeup, and this is their Ugly palette. It's so cute. This is what's left of my Colored Rain collection. This is the Secret Garden palette. This is the Rose Garden palette that's not broken. This is the Botanical palette. This is their Safari Rain palette, one of my favorites from Colored Rain. And this is their beautiful Rebellious Nudes palette. Okay, so I feel like Ace Beauty has made a bit of a comeback this year in my eyes. So I'm going to show you what I have in my collection. This is the Vintage Dawn palette. I love this color story, but I didn't like the quality of this palette. This is their beautiful Oceanic palette. This is their Nostalgia palette. This one I've never used. This is the Flare palette. This is Tropical Vibes from Ace Beauty. And this is one of their launches from 2022. This is Paletopoly. And I think this is the end, guys. I'm going to show you my Beauty Bay palettes and then we're done. I do have a few palettes that are already in my declutter pile. I'm not going to dig those out to show them to you because they're decluttered. I also have a new launch that hasn't even been announced yet, so I'm not going to put it in this video. By the time this video goes up, it'll probably be announced, but make sure you're checking back on my channel for those new palettes. Now let's go ahead and check out my Beauty Bay collection. So this is the Berries palette. This is the Wilderness palette, one of my favorites from Beauty Bay. Love Notes palette from Beauty Bay. New Mood palette from Beauty Bay. Age of Opulence palette from Beauty Bay. This is the Book of Magic. This is Sunset Horizon. And this is New Romance, which is the last palette in this 20 color size I have. This is their collaboration palette with Nikki Tutorials. And this is their giant collaboration palette. It's 42 colors, and this is their collab with Jade, whoever that is. Okay, you guys, that is everything for this collection video. What did you think? If you made it this far in the video, please leave me a heart emoji just so I know you guys sat through that whole video. Also, I would love to know what eyeshadow palette in my collection did you see that you wish you had in your collection. I'm curious because I do have some limited edition palettes that are no longer available, and I want to know what is the one that got away. Actually, just let me know what's the one that got away. It doesn't have to be in my collection. I'm just very nosy. I love chatting to you guys in the comments, so make sure you leave a heart and make sure you let me know what palette got away from you that you wish you could go back in time and get, because I'm nosy. Anyway, you guys, I hope you enjoyed the collection. I know I went through it pretty fast. I just had to do that. I also do have affiliate codes with some of the brands that I mentioned in this video. So make sure you're checking my description box because I have all my codes and links down there for you guys to shop. Thank you so much for sitting through this eyeshadow palette collection video. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed filming it. And I will see you guys in another collection video very, very soon. Bye!